The rain hammered against the windows of our tiny apartment like it was trying to break through, mirroring the chaos inside my chest. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the closed door between my room and the living room, where Maya was probably curled up on the couch, completely unaware that I was about to shatter the carefully constructed friendship we'd built over the past 2 years. My hands were shaking. I'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head. Lying awake at 3 in the morning while she slept peacefully in the room next to mine, I'd imagined every possible outcome, every variation of the words I needed to say. But now that the moment was actually here, all those rehearsed speeches had evaporated like morning mist. It had started so innocently. 2 years ago, when I'd answered her ad for a roommate, I never expected to fall in love. I was fresh out of a messy breakup, desperately needing affordable rent in the city, and she was a graduate student looking to split costs. Our first meeting had been awkward in that way. All roommate interviews are both of us trying to gauge whether the other was a secret axe murderer or had terrible hygiene habits. Maya had opened the door wearing paint overalls and had a smudge of burnt sienna on her left cheek. Her dark hair had been piled into a messy bun, and her brown eyes had assessed me with a mixture of hope and wariness. The apartment had smelled like turpentine and jasmine tea. "Sorry about the mess," she'd said, gesturing at the canvases stacked against every available wall. "I'm an art student. Occupational hazard." I'd fallen a little bit in love with her right then, though I hadn't recognized it yet. I'd told myself it was just appreciation for her talent, admiration for the way her paintings seemed to capture light itself. I'd convinced myself that the flutter in my stomach when she smiled was just gratitude that I'd found such a cool roommate. The lie had lasted about 3 months. Now, 2 years later, I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment friendship had transformed into something more consuming. Maybe it was the night she'd stayed up with me until dawn when my grandmother died, holding me while I sobbed into her shoulder. Maybe it was the morning I'd woken up to find her making my favorite breakfast, pancakes with blueberries arranged in a smiley face, just because she knew I had a big presentation at work. Maybe it was the 1,000 small moments in between, the way she hummed while she painted, the concentrated furrow between her eyebrows when she read, the sound of her laughter that felt like coming home. Or maybe it was the previous Thursday, when I'd walked into the apartment to find her slow dancing alone in the kitchen to an old jazz song, lost in her own world. She'd been wearing one of my oversized hoodies that she'd stolen months ago, and the late afternoon sun had caught in her hair, turning it to gold. She'd opened her eyes, seen me watching, and held out her hand with that crooked smile of hers. "Dance with me," she'd asked. I'd dropped my bag and taken her hand, and we'd swayed together in our tiny kitchen, while Ella Fitzgerald sang about stars falling from the sky. Her head had rested on my shoulder, fitting perfectly into the curve of my neck. My heart had hammered so loudly, I was certain she could hear it. For those few minutes, I'd let myself pretend that this meant something, that the way she held me was more than platonic, that maybe she felt this ache too. When the song ended, she'd pulled back and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Her hand had lingered in mine for just a moment too long. Then her phone had buzzed, breaking the spell, and she'd stepped away to answer it while I'd stood there, dizzy and desperate. That night, I'd made the decision. I couldn't keep living like this, suspended in this beautiful agony, loving her in silence. Either I told her and she felt the same way, a possibility that seemed impossibly wonderful and terrifyingly unlikely, or she didn't, and I'd have to figure out how to move on. But at least I'd know. At least I wouldn't spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I took a deep breath and stood up. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman who looked far braver than she felt. I'd changed my outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and the dark green sweater Maya had once said made my eyes look like emeralds. My auburn hair was down, the way she'd mentioned she liked it. I was pathetic, I realized. Dressing up for my own heartbreak, the walk from my bedroom to the living room felt like crossing an ocean. Each step required a conscious decision not to turn back. My hand on the doorknob was slick with sweat. Maya looked up from her sketchbook when I entered. She was indeed curled up on our battered second-hand couch, wearing soft gray sweatpants and a tank top, her hair loose around her shoulders. The lamp beside her cast a warm glow across her face. She was so beautiful it hurt to look at her. "Hey," she said, smiling. "I was wondering if you'd hibernated in there." I ordered Thai food. Your usual list was the Maya I knew, thoughtful, caring, always remembering the small details that mattered. It made what I was about to do both easier and infinitely harder. "We need to talk," I said, and immediately winced at how ominous it sounded. Her smile faltered. She set down her sketchbook, giving me her full attention. That sounds serious. Are you okay? Did something happen at work? No, it's not work. I sat down on the armchair across from her, needing the distance. If I sat next to her on the couch, I'd lose my nerve entirely. It's about us. The confusion in her eyes was almost painful to witness. Us, Riley. You're scaring me. What's going on? There was no good way to say it, no clever turn of phrase that would make this less terrifying, so I just said it, letting the words tumble out before I could swallow them back. I'm in love with you, Maya. I've been in love with you for a long time now, and I can't keep pretending I'm not. The silence that followed was deafening. The rain continued its assault on the windows. Somewhere in the building, someone was playing music. The bass, a dull thump through the walls. Maya stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. Yo, she started, then stopped. Her face had gone pale. You're in love with me, I nodded, not trusting my voice. My heart was beating so fast I felt lightheaded. Riley, She ran a hand through her hair. A gesture I'd learned meant she was overwhelmed. I need a minute to process this. That wasn't a no, I told myself, but it wasn't a yes either. I watched as she stood up, paced to the window, pressed her forehead against the cool glass. The seconds stretched into minutes. I counted my breaths, trying to stay calm, trying not to let the panic rising in my chest consume me entirely. When she finally turned back to me, her expression was carefully neutral, which somehow felt worse than outright rejection would have been. How long? She asked quietly. I don't know exactly. Months. Maybe longer. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But Maya, it's there every time I look at you. Every time you laugh. Every time you laugh. Every time you. I had to stop, my voice breaking. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. It was killing me. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were glassy with unshed tears. Riley, you're my best friend. You're the most important person in my life. I can't lose that. There it was, the knife sliding between my ribs, gentle but fatal. I'd prepared myself for this possibility, but preparation meant nothing in the face of actual rejection. I know, I managed to say. I know I'm risking everything by telling you, but I hoped. I couldn't finish the sentence. What had I hoped? That she'd been feeling the same desperate longing, that all those moments that felt charged with something more weren't just in my imagination. I need time to think, Maya said, and her voice was so full of pain that I wanted to take it all back, to stuff the words back in my mouth and pretend I'd never said them. It's a lot, Riley. You've just changed everything between us, and I need time to understand what that means. Of course, I said, standing up on shaky legs. I'll be in my room. Take all the time you need. I made it back to my bedroom before the tears started. I closed the door quietly, not wanting her to hear me fall apart, and sank to the floor with my back against the door. I'd done it. I'd been brave. I'd told her the truth. And now I had to live with the consequences. The next few days were excruciating. Maya didn't avoid me exactly, but there was a carefulness to our interactions that hadn't been there before. We moved around each other like dancers who'd forgotten the choreography, uncertain where to step, terrified of colliding. She stopped stealing my hoodies. She didn't suggest our usual Sunday morning coffee run, the easy physical affection we'd always shared, the casual touches, the hugs. The way she used to lean against me while we watched movies, all of it vanished overnight. It was like she was afraid that any contact might encourage me, or worse, reveal something she wasn't ready to reveal. I tried to act normal, but everything felt forced. The apartment that had been my sanctuary now felt like a minefield. I started staying late at work, taking the long way home, anything to delay facing the awkward silence that had replaced our comfortable companionship. That it was Thursday evening, exactly a week after my confession, when I came home to find Maya sitting at our small kitchen table, 2 cups of tea in front of her. The good tea, the expensive jasmine blend we saved for special occasions or particularly bad days. Can we talk? She asked when I walked in. My stomach dropped. This was it. She'd had her time to think, and now she was going to tell me gently, kindly, that she didn't feel the same way. Maybe she'd even suggest I move out. Make it easier for both of us. I'd been half expecting it, had even started looking at apartment listings late at night when I couldn't sleep. I sat down across from her, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. The familiar scent of jasmine should have been comforting, but my throat was too tight to swallow. I've been doing a lot of thinking this week, Maya began. She wasn't meeting my eyes, instead focusing on the tea in her cup. About us, about what you said, about everything. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. When you told me you were in love with me, I panicked, she continued, because it forced me to confront something I've been running from for a really long time. My heart stuttered. That didn't sound like the beginning of a rejection. The truth is, she finally looked up at me, and the vulnerability in her eyes took my breath away. I've had feelings for you too, Riley, for months, maybe even longer than you, but I've been terrified to acknowledge them, let alone act on them. The world tilted. I must have misheard. You? What? I'm scared, she said, and a tear rolled down her cheek. You're my best friend. You're the person I tell everything to, the person who makes me laugh when I'm sad, who believes in my art even when I don't. What if we try this and it doesn't work out? What if I lose you completely? I was having trouble processing her words. She had feelings for me. Maya had feelings for me. The possibility seemed too enormous, too wonderful to be real. That night we danced in the kitchen, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I almost kissed you. I wanted to so badly, but then my phone rang, and I convinced myself I was being ridiculous, that you couldn't possibly feel the same way, and it was safer to have you as a friend than to risk losing you by wanting more. Maya, I breathed, and I was crying now too. Tears of relief and joy and lingering fear all mixed together. I've been so miserable this week thinking I'd ruined everything. You didn't ruin anything, she said fiercely. You were brave enough to tell the truth. I'm the coward who's been hiding. I reached across the table, palm up, an offering. She stared at my hand for a long moment, and I could see the war playing out across her face, fear, battling with hope, doubt struggling against desire. Then, she placed her hand in mine, and it felt like coming home. I don't have all the answers, she said. I don't know how to do this, or what happens if it goes wrong, but I know that this week without you, Riley, without you, not just without your physical presence, but without your friendship, without your warmth, it's been the worst week I've had in years, and I realized that I'm already at risk of losing you by not taking the risk. So what do we do? I asked, hardly daring to hope. I think. She squeezed my hand, and the smallest smile tugged at her lips. I think we try, slowly, carefully, but we try, because you're right, this feeling, whatever it is between us, it's not going away, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what if. The relief that flooded through me was so intense, I felt dizzy. I can do slow, I can do careful, as long as we're doing it together. Together, she repeated, and the words sounded like a promise. We sat there in our kitchen, hands linked across the table, while our tea grew cold and the rain continued to fall outside. Neither of us was quite ready to move forward, to figure out what came next. But for now, this was enough, the acknowledgement that we were both standing at the edge of something new and terrifying, and possibly wonderful, and that we were choosing to jump together. The shift from friends to something more wasn't dramatic. There was no grand romantic gesture, no movie moment first kiss. Instead, it was gradual, tentative, like learning a new language, where we already knew most of the words, but had to figure out a completely different grammar. The first change was the touches. Maya started reaching for me again, but differently now. Her hand would find mine while we watched TV. She'd lean against me while we cooked dinner, her body warm against mine. Each touch carried a question, and each time I responded, squeezing her hand, wrapping my arm around her waist. It was an answer. The first time she kissed me was so gentle I almost thought I'd imagined it. We were on the couch, 2 weeks after our kitchen conversation, ostensibly watching a movie neither of us was paying attention to. She'd been tracing absent patterns on my palm, and I'd been trying not to combust from the simple intimacy of it. Riley, she'd whispered, and when I turned to look at her, she'd leaned in and pressed her lips to mine. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. It was chaste, almost innocent, and it was the most earth-shattering kiss of my entire life. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed and her eyes were wide. Was that okay? She asked, uncertain. Instead of answering with words, I cupped her face in my hands and kissed her again, properly this time. She made a small sound of surprise that melted into a sigh, her hands fisting in my shirt, pulling me closer. The movie played on, forgotten, while we learned the shape of each other's mouths, the taste of each other's lips. The way kissing someone you love is entirely different from kissing someone you just want. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Maya pressed her forehead to mine. I've wanted to do that for so long, she murmured. Me too, I said, and kissed her again, softer this time, savoring it. But learning to be together romantically wasn't without its challenges. We'd been friends for so long that we sometimes forgot we were allowed to be more. Maya would start to tell me about a girl she'd seen at the coffee shop before, remembering that commenting on other women's attractiveness had different implications. Now, I'd catch myself starting to ask for advice about dating before realizing that the person I was dating was her dot. And then there was the fear, always lurking beneath the surface, the knowledge that we'd staked our entire friendship on this working. Some nights, I'd wake up in a panic, convinced that she'd realize she'd made a mistake, that the risk wasn't worth it. Those nights, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, trying to prepare myself for the loss that felt inevitable. It was during one of those sleepless nights, about a month into our relationship, that I heard her bedroom door open. Soft footsteps padded down the hall, and then my door was opening, letting in a shaft of light from the hallway. Riley, Maya's voice was tentative. "Are you awake?" "Yeah," I said, sitting up. "Can't sleep." She crossed the room and sat on the edge of my bed. In the dim light, I could see she'd been crying. My heart clenched. "What's wrong?" I asked, reaching for her hand. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I keep thinking about how I almost lost you by being too afraid to admit how I felt. And then I get scared that I'm going to mess this up somehow, that I'm not good enough at being a girlfriend, that you're going to wake up one day and realize you made a mistake." It was startling to hear my own fears reflected back at me. I'd assumed I was the only one lying awake with doubts. "Maya, look at me." I waited until her eyes met mine. "I'm scared too. I'm terrified that I'm going to do something wrong, say something wrong, be something wrong. But you know what I'm more scared of? Not trying, going back to how things were before, pretending this thing between us doesn't exist." "Really?" Her voice was small, young-sounding. "Really?" I pulled her down beside me, wrapping the blankets around both of us. She curled into my side, her head on my chest, and I felt some of the tension leave her body. "We're both going to mess up sometimes. We're learning how to do this, but we're learning together, okay? And as long as we keep talking to each other, keep being honest, I think we're going to be okay. Promise," she whispered. "I promise to try my absolute hardest," I said, kissing the top of her head. "That's all I can promise. But Maya, I've never wanted anything to work out more than I want this to work out. You're worth fighting for. We're worth fighting for." She was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe she'd fallen asleep. Then she tilted her head up and kissed me, soft and sweet and full of unspoken promises. "Stay?" I asked when we broke apart. "Yeah," she said, settling back against me. "I'll stay." She fell asleep first, her breathing evening out, her body relaxed and warm against mine. I lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathe, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, and thought that maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. 3 months into our relationship, I started noticing the small changes in Maya. She was distracted during our conversations, her mind clearly elsewhere. She spent longer hours in her studio at school, often coming home after I'd already gone to bed. When I asked if something was wrong, she'd smile and say everything was fine. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. I told myself it was just stress about her thesis. She was in her final year of her MFA program, and the pressure was intense. But there was a voice in the back of my mind whispering that it was more than that, that maybe she was realizing she'd made a mistake, that maybe the fear we'd both expressed was manifesting into reality. The breaking point came on a Friday night. We'd planned a date, a real date, not just hanging out at the apartment. Dinner at the Italian place we both loved, followed by a late movie. I'd been looking forward to it all week, a chance to reconnect after the distance I'd been feeling between us. I waited for her at the restaurant for 45 minutes before she finally texted, "So sorry, lost track of time at the studio. Still working, rain check." I stared at the text, hurt and anger warring in my chest. This wasn't the first time she'd canceled plans recently, but it was the first time she'd simply not shown up. I paid for the wine I'd ordered while waiting, and walked home through the cold night air, trying to sort through the tangle of my emotions. When I got back to the apartment, it was dark. Maya was still at her studio. I sat on the couch in the darkness, and for the first time since we'd gotten together, I let myself wonder if this was the beginning of the end. She came home around midnight, pain-stained and exhausted. The guilt on her face when she saw me sitting there was obvious. "Riley, I'm so sorry," she started. "I completely lost track of time, and my phone died." "And is this because you're having second thoughts?" I asked, cutting through her excuses. "About us." She froze, her bag sliding off her shoulder. What? No, Riley, no, that's not what this is. Then what is it? I stood up, all the hurt and frustration I'd been suppressing spilling out. Because you've been pulling away for weeks, you're never here, and when you are here, you're not really present. You cancel plans, you barely talk to me anymore. What am I supposed to think? I've just been busy with my thesis. Don't. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Don't use your thesis as an excuse. We've been living together for 2 years. I've seen you busy before. This is different. So please, just be honest with me. Are you regretting this? Do you want out? Maya's face crumpled. She sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. No, she said, her voice muffled. God, no, Riley, that's not it at all. I sat down beside her, maintaining some distance, waiting for her to explain. My thesis show is in 3 weeks, she said finally, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes, and I've been completely blocked. Nothing I'm painting feels right. Every piece looks amateur, uninspired. My advisor told me last week that if I don't pull it together, I might not pass. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, softening slightly. Because I'm embarrassed, she admitted. Because you've been so supportive of my art, and I didn't want to admit that I'm failing. And because... She paused, struggling with the words. Because I've been terrified that the reason I can't paint is because I'm so happy with you. And what if that means I have to choose between my art and our relationship? The confession hung in the air between us. I'd known that Maya's identity as an artist was core to who she was, but I'd never realized she saw it as potentially at odds with us being together. That's ridiculous, I said gently. Maya, being happy doesn't make you less creative. That's not how it works, isn't it? She laughed bitterly. All my best work has come from pain, from heartbreak, from struggle. What am I supposed to paint about now? How happy I am, how lucky I feel. It's not exactly compelling. I thought about this for a moment. What if you're blocked because you're trying to paint like you used to paint, instead of painting how you need to paint now? Maybe your art needs to evolve along with your life. She looked at me like I'd said something profound, though I'd just been thinking out loud. I haven't thought about it that way. And Maya, I took her hand. I need you to promise me something. The next time you're struggling, the next time you're scared or stressed or feeling like you're failing, you talk to me. That's what I'm here for. That's what we're here for, to support each other. But I can't support you if you shut me out. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry, I've been so in my own head, and I didn't realize I was hurting you in the process. We're still learning, I said, echoing what I'd told her months ago. But we have to learn together, which means being honest even when it's hard. She nodded, then leaned against me, and I wrapped my arms around her. We sat like that for a long time, and I felt the distance that had been growing between us start to close. For what it's worth, she said eventually, I've never regretted us, not for a single second. I just got scared and handled it badly. We're both still scared sometimes, I acknowledged. But Maya, we can't let fear make our decisions for us. We tried that before, and it nearly kept us from having this at all. You're right, she said, sitting up to look at me properly. And I promise no more shutting you out, even if what I'm feeling is messy or complicated or makes me feel vulnerable. Especially then. Deal, I said, and kissed her softly. Now, tell me about your thesis. What are you supposed to be painting? We stayed up until 3 in the morning, talking about her art, her fears, her dreams for what she wanted to create. I listened and asked questions, and slowly, I watched the weight she'd been carrying start to lift. And when we finally went to bed together in my room now, that transition having happened so naturally I couldn't remember when exactly it became the norm. I felt like we'd navigated our first real crisis. We'd stumbled, but we hadn't fallen. That had to count for something. Maya's thesis exhibition was on a Thursday evening in early May. I'd taken the day off work to help her set up, hanging pieces, adjusting lighting, running for more wine glasses when she realized they didn't have enough. She was a bundle of nervous energy, rearranging paintings for the 100th time, second-guessing every decision. What if no one comes? She worried, adjusting a frame that was already perfectly straight. What if they do come and they hate it? What if my advisor was right and I'm not ready? Maya, I caught her hands, stilling them. Your work is incredible. Everyone who sees it is going to be blown away. Trust me. She'd been painting obsessively for the past 3 weeks, often working through the night. After our conversation that Friday night, something had broken free in her. The paintings that emerged were different from her earlier work, bolder, more vulnerable, more raw. Many of them featured 2 figures, dancing, touching, existing in shared spaces. She never said they were us, but I recognized us in every BRUSHSTROKE. The centerpiece of the exhibition was a large canvas titled The Space Between Us. It showed two women in a kitchen, caught in the moment just before or just after a kiss. The viewer couldn't quite tell. The uncertainty was the point. The space between them was rendered in these beautiful, shimmering layers of color that made it impossible to tell where one figure ended and the other began. I'd cried the first time I'd seen it now, as the gallery began to fill with people, her professors, other students, friends, family. I watched Maya transform. She put on her professional artist persona, discussing technique and inspiration and the evolution of her style. But every so often, her eyes would find mine across the room, and I'd see the real her beneath the polish, nervous and hopeful and so incredibly talented. Her advisor, a stern woman named Professor Chen, spent a long time in front of the space between us. Maya stood beside me, practically vibrating with anxiety. "That's it," she whispered. "She hates it. I'm going to fail." But then Professor Chen turned to Maya with something that might have been a smile. "Miss Torres, I have to say, I had my doubts after our conversation last month, but this," she gestured at the painting, "this is the work I knew you were capable of. It's honest, technically accomplished, and emotionally resonant. Congratulations, you've passed, and passed well." The relief on Maya's face was palpable. She thanked Professor Chen professionally, but as soon as her advisor moved on to the next painting, Maya grabbed my hand and squeezed it so hard it hurt. "You did it," I whispered, grinning at her. "We did it," she corrected, and the look she gave me made my heart skip. The evening passed in a blur of conversations and compliments. I watched person after person fall in love with Maya's work, and I felt an overwhelming pride that this brilliant, talented, incredible woman had chosen me. Toward the end of the night, her parents approached us. I'd met them before, briefly, but always as Maya's roommate. I wasn't sure what Maya had told them about us, and I felt suddenly nervous. "Riley," her mother said warmly, pulling me into a hug. "It's so good to see you again. Maya tells us you've been a tremendous support during this process." "I just did what any friend would do," I said, stumbling slightly over the word. Maya's mother gave me a knowing look. "Maya told us you're more than friends now. We're so happy for both of you." I glanced at Maya, who was blushing but smiling. "You told them." "Of course I told them," she said, taking my hand openly, in front of her parents and everyone else. "You're the most important person in my life. Why would I keep that a secret?" Her father clapped me on the shoulder. "We've been hoping Maya would find someone who makes her happy. From what we can see, that's you." I was touched beyond words. The casual acceptance, the genuine warmth, it was more than I'd hoped for. After her parents moved on to talk to other people, Maya pulled me aside, into a quieter corner of the gallery. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For pushing me to be honest about what I was feeling. For being patient while I figured my shit out." She cupped my face in her hands. "For being brave enough to tell me you loved me, even when you were terrified I'd break your heart." "Maya," I started, but she cut me off with a kiss, right there in the middle of her thesis exhibition, in front of everyone. When we broke apart, she kept her forehead pressed to mine. "I love you, Riley. I'm sorry I haven't said it before. I've been scared of the words, like saying them out loud would somehow jinx us, but I love you. I've loved you for so long, and I'm done being afraid to say it." The gallery, the people, the paintings, all of it faded away. There was just her, just us. Just this moment. "I love you too," I said, even though she already knew. "So much it scares me sometimes." "Good scared or bad scared?" she asked, a small smile playing at her lips. "Good scared," I decided, "the kind of scared that means it matters." She kissed me again, softer this time, a promise rather than a declaration. "Let's go home," she murmured against my lips. "Your exhibition isn't over yet." "I don't care. I've done what I needed to do here. Now, I want to go home with my girlfriend and celebrate properly." The word girlfriend still sent a thrill through me. I didn't think that would ever get old. We said our goodbyes, accepted final congratulations, and slipped out into the warm May evening. The walk back to our apartment felt different than all the times we'd walked it before. The space between us was gone. Our hands were linked, our shoulders brushing, and when we got home, we didn't go to separate rooms anymore. This was us now together, open, unafraid. Well, maybe still a little afraid, but facing that fear side by side made all the difference. 6 months later, On a cold November evening, I came home from work to find Maya cooking dinner. This wasn't unusual. We'd fallen into an easy rhythm of domestic life, trading off cooking duties, doing dishes together, fighting over closet space now that her clothes had migrated almost entirely into my room. What was unusual was the envelope sitting on the kitchen counter, addressed to Maya with a return address from a gallery in New York. "Is that what I think it is?" I asked, setting down my bag. She looked up from the pasta she was stirring, and her expression was carefully neutral. "Maybe. I haven't opened it yet. I was waiting for you." She'd applied to show her work at a small but prestigious gallery in Manhattan. It was a long shot. Hundreds of artists applied for only a handful of slots. But her thesis exhibition had gotten attention, and her advisor had encouraged her to try. "Do you want me to open it?" I offered, knowing how much these things meant to her, how devastating rejection could be. She shook her head. "No, I need to do this." She turned off the stove, wiped her hands on a dish towel, and picked up the envelope. Her hands were shaking slightly. I stood beside her, close enough to offer support but not so close as to crowd her. She tore open the envelope, pulled out the letter, and read it. I watched her face, trying to gauge the contents from her expression. Her eyes widened. She read it again, then she looked up at me, and there were tears streaming down her face. "I got in," she whispered. "Riley, I got in. They want to show my work in February." I grabbed her, spinning her around, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. "Oh my God, Maya, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." She was laughing through her tears, clutching the letter like it might disappear. "They said my work demonstrates a rare combination of technical skill and emotional vulnerability. They want to feature the space between us as the centerpiece. Because it's your best work," I said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Because you're incredibly talented and they'd be fools not to recognize it." We celebrated that night with cheap champagne and burnt pasta, dancing in our kitchen to the same jazz song we'd danced to over a year ago. But this time, there was no hesitation, no pretending. It was just friendly. This time, when she looked at me, there was certainty in her eyes. "I have to tell you something," she said as we swayed together. "The gallery wants me in New York for the exhibition, for at least a month, maybe longer if the show does well." My heart sank, though I tried to keep my expression neutral. That's great. It's a huge opportunity." Riley, she stopped dancing, holding both my hands. "Come with me." "What?" "Come with me to New York. I know your job is here, and I know this is a big ask, but I can't imagine being there without you. And I've been thinking, maybe this is the right time for both of us to take a leap." "Maya, I can't just quit my job and move to New York on a whim." "It's not a whim," she interrupted gently. "You've been talking about how stagnant you feel at work, how you've been wanting a change, and you have that marketing degree you've never really used. New York has opportunities. We could find a place together, a real place that's ours from the beginning, not just my place or your place, but our place." I wanted to say yes immediately, but the practical part of my brain was already calculating rent prices, job markets, the risk of appending my entire life. "What if it doesn't work out?" I asked quietly. "The show, I mean. What if we move there and it's a disaster?" "Then we figure it out together," Maya said. "But Riley, I don't want to do this without you. Not the show, not the move, not any of it. These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. I want to build a future with you, and I think New York could be the start of that." I looked at her, really looked at her, at the hope in her eyes, the vulnerability, the love, and I realized that I'd been so focused on the risks that I'd forgotten about the possibilities. "Okay," I heard myself say, "let's do it. Let's move to New York." The smile that broke across her face was worth every bit of uncertainty. The 2 months between her acceptance and the craft exhibition were a whirlwind. I gave notice at my job, endured the shocked reactions of my coworkers, who'd always seen me as the responsible, stable one. Maya and I spent weekends looking at apartments in New York via video calls, trying to find something we could afford that wasn't the size of a closet. We ended up in a tiny one-bedroom in Brooklyn, with barely enough room for Maya's easel and our bed, but with big windows that let in gorgeous light. It was expensive, cramped, and perfect. The move itself was chaotic. We argued about what to keep and what to leave behind, both of us stressed and snapping at each other in ways we never had before. The night before the moving truck came, we had our worst fight yet. "You're bringing all of those?" Maya asked, staring at the boxes of books I'd packed. "They're books, Maya." "Yes, I'm bringing them. We don't have space for all your books. We barely have space for my painting supplies." So your art is more important than my books. I shot back, knowing I was being unfair but too exhausted to care. That's not what I said, it's what you implied. She threw her hands up. Fine. Bring all the books. We'll just have to live in a library. Maybe I should just stay here then, I said, and immediately regretted it when I saw the hurt flash across her face. Maya, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, did you? She asked quietly. Do you not want to come? Because if you're having second thoughts, I need to know now, not after we've moved everything. I sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling all the stress and fear I'd been pushing down for weeks. I'm terrified, I admitted. I'm leaving my job, my city, everything familiar, and I don't even have a job lined up in New York yet. What if I can't find work? What if we can't afford rent? What if this whole thing is a huge mistake? Maya sat beside me, some of the anger draining from her face. You think I'm not scared too? I'm about to show my work to one of the most critical art audiences in the country. What if they hate it? What if the show is a failure and we moved all the way to New York for nothing? We looked at each other, and despite everything, I started to laugh. We're a mess. We really are, she agreed, laughing too. But we're a mess together, right? Together, I confirmed, taking her hand. I'm sorry about the book's comment. Bring whatever you need for your art. We'll make it work. And I'm sorry for dismissing your books. You're right there, important to you. We'll find space somehow. We ended up compromising, donating some books to the local library but keeping my favorites. It was a small thing, but it felt significant learning to navigate disagreements, to prioritize each other, to find solutions, instead of just digging into our positions. The move to New York was exhausting. Our apartment was on a fourth-floor walk-up with no elevator. By the time we'd hauled everything up, we were both sweaty, sore, and irritable. We ordered pizza, ate it, sitting on the floor surrounded by boxers, and fell asleep that night on a mattress on the floor because we were too tired to set up the bed frame. But when I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through those big windows, with Maya curled against me and the sounds of the city filtering up from below, I felt something like hope. The first few weeks were hard. I applied to dozens of jobs and heard nothing back. Maya worked obsessively on final preparations for her show, stressed and distracted. We were both adjusting to a new city, new routines, new everything, and the stress showed in small ways, snapping at each other over dishes, getting annoyed about habits that had never bothered us before. One night, about 3 weeks in, I was cooking dinner while Maya painted. She'd been distant all day, barely speaking, lost in her own world. I tried to engage her in conversation several times, only to be met with distracted one-word answers. Maya, I finally said, turning off the stove, can you please put down the brush and talk to me? I'm working, she said without looking up. You've been working for 8 hours straight. You need to eat. We need to talk. About what? She still didn't look at me. About the fact that we've barely had a real conversation in days. About the fact that you seem a million miles away even when you're right here. She finally set down her brush, but her expression was irritated. Riley, the show is in 2 weeks. I don't have time for me. I finished, hurt bleeding into anger. You don't have time for me. That's not fair. You know how important this is. And you know I'm struggling too. My voice came out louder than I intended. I haven't found a job. I'm in a new city where I don't know anyone except you. And you're so wrapped up in your art that you don't even notice that I'm drowning. The silence that followed was heavy. Maya stared at me, and I saw the moment my words actually registered. Riley, she started, her face falling. Why didn't you tell me? I've been trying to, but you're never really here anymore. Even when we're in the same room, you're somewhere else. She stood up, crossing to me, paint still on her hands. I'm so sorry. You're right. I've been so focused on the show that I haven't been paying attention to what you need. That's not okay. I don't want to be a burden, I said, feeling the tears I'd been holding back start to fall. I know, this show is huge for you. I need you to sometimes. You're not a burden. You're never a burden. She pulled me into her arms, and I let myself collapse against her. Tell me what's going on. Really going on. So I did. I told her about the rejection emails, about feeling lost and purposeless, about missing my friends back home, about feeling like I'd made a terrible mistake. She listened without interrupting, just holding me, and when I was done, she kissed my forehead. I'm sorry I haven't been there for you, she said. I get so tunnel-visioned when I'm stressed, and I forget that other people need me too, especially you. But Riley, you didn't make a mistake. We're going to figure this out, and starting tomorrow, I'm going to be more present. We'll set aside time every day to actually connect, not just exist in the same space. You don't have to change your whole process for me. It's not changing my process. It's remembering that my art isn't the only thing that matters. You matter. We matter. And if I'm too obsessed with the show to remember that, then I need to recalibrate. True to her word, she started setting boundaries. She worked on her art for set hours, then put it away and was fully present. We started taking evening walks through our new neighborhood, exploring, finding our favorite coffee shop, slowly making Brooklyn feel like home. And when I finally got a job offer, a marketing position at a small nonprofit that was actually exciting and meaningful, Maya insisted we celebrate properly. We went to a nice restaurant we definitely couldn't afford, drank wine, and toasted 2 new beginnings. I'm proud of you, she said, raising her glass, for taking this risk, for being patient with me while I was being a self-absorbed artist, for not giving up on us even when it got hard. I'm proud of us, I corrected. We're learning, we're figuring it out. Together, she said, echoing the promise we'd made so many times. Together, I agreed. The night of Maya's New York exhibition, I was more nervous than she was. I'd helped her set up earlier that day, hanging pieces, watching her make final adjustments. The gallery was small but prestigious, the kind of space where careers were made. The space between us had pride of place, the first thing visitors would see when they walked in. Standing in front of it, I felt the same awe I'd felt the first time I'd seen it. It was us, captured in paint, all the uncertainty and hope and love that had defined our journey. What do you think? Maya asked, coming to stand beside me. I think it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, I said honestly. I think New York is going to love you. She took my hand, squeezing it. None of this happens without you. You know that, right? You're in every single one of these paintings. I looked around at her work, all the pieces she'd created over the past year. She was right. I could see us in all of them, not literally, but in the emotion, the vulnerability, the way she captured intimacy and connection. I love you, I said, not caring that we were in a public gallery with people starting to filter in. I love you too, she replied, and kissed me softly. The opening was a success. Critics praised her work, collectors expressed interest, and by the end of the night, 3 pieces had sold, including one of the larger paintings for more money than I would have believed possible. But the moment I'd remember forever was watching Maya talk to a young woman, probably college-aged, who stood in front of the space between us with tears in her eyes. It's beautiful, the young woman said. Is it? Are they? Yes, Maya said gently, understanding the question. It's about 2 women falling in love. I've never seen anything like this in a gallery before, the young woman said. I mean, I'm sure it exists, but I've never personally seen it. And it makes me feel less alone, you know? Maya's eyes found mine across the gallery, and I saw them glisten with tears. I know exactly what you mean, she told the young woman. That's why I painted it, so other people would know they're not alone either. After the young woman moved on, Maya came back to me. Did you hear that? I did. That's it, she said. That's why I do this. Not for the critics or the sales or any of it. For making someone feel less alone. I pulled her close, not caring who saw. You're amazing, you know that. I'm lucky, she corrected. Lucky that I get to do what I love. Lucky that I found someone who supports me. Lucky that I was brave enough, that you were brave enough to take a chance on us. The exhibition ran for 6 weeks, and it exceeded everyone's expectations. Maya got offers to show in other galleries. Critics wrote glowing reviews. Her career, which had seemed like such a long shot, was suddenly real and viable. But more than that, we were building a life. I loved my new job. We'd made friends in Brooklyn, other artists, a couple from the coffee shop we frequented, neighbors in our building. The city that had seemed so overwhelming at first was starting to feel like home. 6 months after the exhibition, on a Saturday morning in August, I woke up to find Maya already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching me. That's creepy, I mumbled, still half asleep. You're beautiful when you sleep, she said, brushing hair off my forehead. You're a liar, but I love you anyway. I stretched, noting the sun streaming through our windows. What time is it? Early, but I wanted to ask you something, and I wanted to do it before I lost my nerve. Something in her tone made me wake up fully. I sat up, suddenly alert. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. The opposite, actually. She took a deep breath. Riley, we've been together for almost 2 years now. We've navigated so much, coming out to each other, learning to be in a relationship, moving to a new city, building a life together. And every single day, I'm grateful that you were brave enough to tell me how you felt, because otherwise, I might have spent my whole life too afraid to take the risk. My heart was pounding. I had a feeling I knew where this was going, but I was afraid to hope. I don't have a ring, Maya continued. I thought about getting one, but I wanted us to pick it out together if you say yes. But Riley, I don't want to wait another day to ask you this. She took both my hands in hers. Will you marry me? Will you keep building this life with me? Keep taking risks with me? Keep choosing me every day the way I choose you? I was crying, nodding before I could even form words. Yes, God, yes. Of course, yes. She was crying too, laughing, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like tears and joy and the future we were going to build together. I love you so much, she said, when we finally broke apart. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for confessing. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when it was scary. Thank you for saying yes that night in the kitchen, I replied. Thank you for taking the risk with me. We spent the rest of the morning in bed, making plans, dreaming about the future, occasionally stopping to kiss or to simply look at each other and wonder that this was real, that this was our life now. Later, we'd call our families and friends, we'd celebrate and plan and figure out all the logistics of a wedding. But for now, it was just us in our tiny Brooklyn apartment, with the sun streaming through the windows and the whole future spread out before us. The gallery opening in Seattle was packed. Maya's work had been featured in exhibitions across the country over the past 5 years, but this one was special. It was in our hometown, where our story had started. I stood in front of a new painting, one I hadn't seen until today. It was titled The Kitchen, and it showed 2 women slow dancing in a small kitchen. Late afternoon light streaming through the window, one woman's head rested on the other's shoulder, and the expression on her face was pure contentment. That's my favorite, said a voice beside me. I turned to find an older woman, probably in her 60s, smiling at the painting. Mine too, I said, though I might be biased. That's me and my wife, I explained, gesturing at the painting. She's the artist, Maya Torres. You're married to Maya Torres. The woman's face lit up. Her work is extraordinary. My granddaughter is gay, and I've been trying to find art for her apartment, something that reflects her experience. This would be perfect. The artist is right over there, I said, pointing to where Maya was talking to a group of admirers. I'm sure she'd love to meet your granddaughter. The woman thanked me and moved on, and I turned back to the painting. It captured a moment from 5 years ago, the moment that had changed everything. Maya had painted it from memory, she'd told me, because that day was seared into her mind as the beginning of us. What do you think? Maya appeared at my side, slipping her arm around my waist. I think you captured it perfectly, I said, leaning into her. I can almost hear Ella Fitzgerald. That was the day I knew, she said softly. The day I realized I was in love with you and that I was probably going to lose you because I was too afraid to do anything about it. Good thing I was brave for both of us. She laughed. The bravest thing you ever did. Second bravest, I corrected. The bravest was moving to New York with you when I had no idea if it would work out. How'd that turn out, by the way? I held up my left hand, where a simple silver band caught the light. Pretty well, I'd say. She kissed me, right there in the middle of her exhibition, the same way she'd kissed me at her thesis show, all those years ago. Some things never changed. She still painted obsessively. I still worried about practical things. We still had moments of doubt and fear, but we'd learned to navigate them together. We'd learned that love wasn't about never being scared or never fighting or never doubting. It was about choosing each other anyway, every single day, even when it was hard. Come on, Maya said, tugging my hand. There's someone I want you to meet. She led me through the crowd to where a young woman stood in front of the space between us. She was and she was crying. Hi, Maya said gently. I'm the artist. This is my wife, Riley. The young woman's eyes widened. You're Maya Torres. Oh my God. Your work, it means so much to me. I've been struggling with coming out, and seeing your art, seeing 2 women so openly in love, it makes me feel like maybe it's going to be okay. Maya glanced at me, and I saw the echo of that moment from 5 years ago, when another young woman had said almost the same thing. It's going to be more than okay, Maya told her. It's going to be hard sometimes, and scary, and there will be moments when you doubt everything. But when you find your person, when you find someone worth being brave for, it's worth every moment of fear. How did you know? The young woman asked. How did you know she was worth the risk? Maya smiled at me. that crooked smile I'd fallen in love with so many years ago, because even the thought of not trying was worse than the fear of it not working out, because she made me want to be braver than I was, because loving her felt like coming home. The young woman nodded, wiping her tears. Thank you, for your art, for your honesty, for being visible. It matters. After she walked away, I pulled Maya close. You're changing lives, you know? Every time you put your work out there, every time you tell our story, you're making it easier for someone else. We're changing lives, she corrected. This is our story, Riley. I'm just the one who paints it. I looked around the gallery at all the people admiring her work, at the faces reflecting recognition and hope and possibility. And I thought about that night in our old apartment, when I'd been so terrified to confess my feelings, when the risk had seemed insurmountable. If I could go back and tell that version of myself anything, it would be this. Be brave, take the risk, say the words, because on the other side of that fear is everything you've ever wanted. Maya squeezed my hand. What are you thinking about? About how lucky we are, I said. About how glad I am that I confessed that night, even though I was terrified. About how glad I am that I said yes, Maya added, even though I was just as terrified. Together, I said, the word that had become our promise, our foundation, our truth. Together, she echoed, and kissed me again. And standing there in that gallery, surrounded by the visual representation of our love story, I knew that every risk had been worth it. Every moment of fear, every difficult conversation, every time we'd chosen to be brave, all of it had led us here, to this life we'd built together, to this love that had transformed us both. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when your voice shakes. Sometimes the most important words are the ones you're most afraid to say. Riley's hands were sweating as she stood outside the Italian restaurant. She'd walked past it 3 times already, trying to gather the courage to go inside. This was ridiculous. She'd known Maya for 2 years. They'd eaten together hundreds of times. But this was different. This was a date. Their first official date. Maya had asked her the night before, shy and nervous in a way Riley had rarely seen her. I know we said we'd take things slow, but would you want to go on an actual date with me? Like, a real one, where I pick you up and we go somewhere nice and I try to impress you. Riley had said yes immediately, but now, standing here in the dress she'd changed into 4 times, she was questioning everything. What if the transition from friends to more ruined the easy comfort they'd always had? What if she said something stupid? What if Maya realized she'd made a mistake? You planning to stand out here all night? Or are you going to come inside? Riley spun around to find Maya standing behind her, a small smile playing at her lips. She was wearing a dark blue dress that Riley had never seen before, her hair styled in loose waves, and she was holding a single sunflower, Riley's favorite flower. How long have you been standing there? Riley asked, mortified. Long enough to watch you pace back and forth 3 times. Maya's smile widened. It's kind of adorable, actually. Nice to know I'm not the only one who's nervous. You're nervous, terrified, Maya admitted, offering her the sun. I've been planning this date in my head for months, and now I'm worried I'm going to mess it up somehow. Riley took the flower, her fingers brushing Maya's, and felt some of her anxiety melt away. We're both disasters. The worst, Maya agreed. But maybe we can be disasters together. Riley laughed, and suddenly it felt easier. This was still Maya, her best friend, her roommate, the person who knew her better than anyone. The only difference was that now she got to hold her hand as they walked into the restaurant. Dinner was both awkward and perfect. They fumbled through the strange formality of a first date while simultaneously knowing everything about each other. Maya accidentally knocked over her water glass while gesturing too enthusiastically about a painting she'd seen. Riley laughed so hard at one of Maya's stories that wine came out of her nose, which was mortifying but also broke any remaining tension. This is so weird, Riley said as they waited for dessert. Weird bad or weird good? Weird good, like, I know your coffee order and your middle name, and that you're afraid of moths. But I don't know what it's like to kiss you more than once. I know you hate mornings, but I don't know what it's like to wake up next to you. I know everything and nothing at the same time. Maya reached across the table, taking Riley's hand. Then, I guess we get to discover all the new things, while keeping all the good things we already have. That sounds nice, Riley said softly. It does, doesn't it? Maya's thumb traced patterns on Riley's palm. For what it's worth, this is the best first date I've ever been on, even though I snorted wine out of my nose, especially because of that. Maya grinned. That's very on brand for you. They skipped dessert and walked through the city instead, hand in hand, talking about nothing and everything. When they got back to their apartment, they stood in the hallway between their bedrooms, neither quite ready for the night to end. I had a really good time, Maya said, and she sounded young, vulnerable. Me too. Riley stepped closer. Can I kiss you goodnight, please? The kiss was soft, tentative, neither of them quite sure of the choreography yet, but when they pulled apart, both smiling, Riley thought that maybe the awkwardness was part of the beauty. They were learning each other in a completely new way, and that was something special. Good night, Maya, Riley whispered. Good night, Riley. They went to their separate rooms, but Riley fell asleep smiling, the sunflower on her nightstand and the taste of Maya's lips still on hers. Bonus, Scene 2, meeting the parents 6 months into their relationship. I think I'm going to throw up, Riley said, staring at the front door of Maya's childhood home. You're not going to throw up, Maya said, though she looked almost as nervous. They're going to love you. They already love you. You've met them before. As your roommate, not as your girlfriend. That's completely different. They were in San Diego for Thanksgiving, Maya's family's annual gathering. Riley had met Maya's parents briefly before, but this was different. This time, they knew. Maya had come out to them 2 months ago over the phone, and while they'd been supportive, this was the first time Riley would face them as Maya's partner. My mom has been asking about you nonstop, Maya said, squeezing Riley's hand. She wants to know everything: how we got together, how long you've liked me, whether you're treating me well, and your dad's quieter about it, but he asked me if you made me happy, and when I said yes, he said that's all that matters to him. Before Riley could respond, the door flew open, and Maya's mother appeared, beaming. Mia and Riley, don't just stand there. Come in, come in. Within seconds, Riley was enveloped in a hug that smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. Mrs. Torres, Elena, please, your family now. She pulled back, studying Riley's face. Let me look at you. Oh, Maya, she's beautiful. Though I suppose you already know that. Riley felt her face heat up as Maya laughed. Yes, Mom, I'm aware. Maya's father appeared behind his wife, more reserved but smiling. Riley, good to see you again. You too, Mr. Torres. Roberto, he corrected, then surprised her by pulling her into a brief hug. Thank you for making my daughter happy. That's all a father can ask for. The evening was a whirlwind of relatives, food, and questions. Maya's grandmother kept patting Riley's cheek and saying something in rapid Spanish that made Maya blush. Her younger brother teased them mercilessly, but in a way that felt inclusive rather than mean. Her aunt asked pointed questions about their future plans that made them both squirm. But it was during dinner, when the whole family was gathered around the table, that the moment Riley had been dreading arrived. Maya's uncle, a stern-looking man who'd barely spoken to her all evening, cleared his throat. So, Riley, he said, and the table quieted. You're dating my niece. Yes, sir, Riley said, trying to keep her voice steady. And what are your intentions? Maya groaned. Tio Luis, this isn't the 1950s. It's okay. Riley interrupted, looking directly at Maya's uncle. I love your niece. I love her more than I knew it was possible to love someone. My intention is to support her, to make her happy, to be her partner in every way that matters, and if I'm very lucky, she'll let me keep doing that for the rest of our lives. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Maya's grandmother started clapping, and suddenly everyone was talking at once, laughing and teasing and welcoming Riley into the family chaos. Maya's uncle nodded once, a small smile tugging at his lips. Good answer, he said, then went back to his food. Under the table, Maya found Riley's hand and squeezed it 3 times, their code for I love you. Riley squeezed back, relief and joy flooding through her. She'd survived meeting the family. More than that, she'd been welcomed. Later that night, lying in the guest room they were sharing in separate beds, at Elena's insistence, Maya whispered across the darkness. You really meant what you said, didn't you? About the rest of our lives? Every word, Riley whispered back. Is that okay? More than okay. There was rustling, and then Maya was climbing into Riley's bed, curling against her side. It's everything. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when Elena found them in the morning, she simply smiled and quietly closed the door. 2 weeks before the proposal, Maya had been carrying the ring box in her bag for 3 days, and it was driving her crazy. Every time she reached for her phone or her wallet, she felt it there, a small velvet reminder of the question she was terrified to ask. She'd bought the ring on impulse after her exhibition had ended successfully. She'd been walking through the village when she'd passed a small jewelry shop, and there it had been in the window, a simple silver band with a tiny emerald, the exact color of Riley's eyes. She'd gone inside meaning just to look, and somehow walked out with it in her pocket and a significantly lighter bank account. That had been 3 weeks ago. Since then, she'd tried to propose 7 times and chickened out every single time. She'd planned to do it at the coffee shop, where they had their first date in New York. But Riley had been stressed about a work project and the moment hadn't felt right. She'd tried at the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, but there'd been too many tourists and she couldn't find the words. She'd even considered doing it over breakfast one morning, but Riley had been running late and had barely had time to drink her coffee before rushing out the door. "You're being ridiculous," she told her reflection in the bathroom mirror. "Just ask her. She's going to say yes. You know she's going to say yes." But what if she didn't? What if Maya was reading everything wrong? What if Riley liked things the way they were and didn't want to get married? What if proposing ruined everything, Maya? Riley's voice came from the bedroom. "You okay in there? You've been in the bathroom for 20 minutes. Fine," Maya called back, wincing at how high-pitched her voice sounded. "Just fixing my hair." She stared at the ring box, sitting innocuously on the bathroom counter. She'd brought it in with her this morning, thinking maybe today would be the day, and then had promptly panicked and hidden it behind the toothpaste. This was absurd. She'd faced gallery critics, demanding professors, her entire family's questions about her life choices. She'd moved across the country, started a career from scratch, put her art and her heart on display for the world to judge. But asking Riley to marry her felt more terrifying than all of that combined. Because Riley was everything. She was home and safety and love and partnership. She was the reason Maya's art had depth, the reason she'd learned to be brave, the reason she got up every morning excited about the day ahead. And the thought of Riley saying no, of losing her, of ruining what they had, it was unbearable. "Maya, seriously, are you okay?" Riley knocked on the door. "I'm starting to worry." Maya grabbed the ring box, shoved it back in her bag, and opened the door. Riley was standing there in her pajamas, her hair messy from sleep, no makeup, looking absolutely beautiful. "I'm fine," Maya said. "Sorry, just got lost in thought." Riley studied her face. "You're being weird. What's going on?" "Nothing. Everything's fine. Great. Perfect. You're a terrible liar." Riley took her hand. "Come on. Whatever it is, you can tell me. We promised to be honest with each other. Remember?" And looking at her, at this woman who knew her better than anyone, who'd taken a risk on her, who'd moved across the country for her, who loved her despite and because of all her flaws, Maya realized something. There was no perfect moment, no ideal setting, no perfect words. The only thing that mattered was the question and the answer. And she already knew in her heart what that answer would be, but she needed more time, just a little more time to gather her courage. "I love you," Maya said instead. "That's all. I was just thinking about how much I love you." Riley's expression softened. "I love you too, you weirdo. Now come back to bed. It's Saturday and neither of us has to be anywhere." They spent the morning in bed, lazy and content, and Maya held Riley close and mentally rehearsed the words she would say. Soon, she promised herself. Very soon. It took another 2 weeks, but when she finally asked Shirley on a random Saturday morning, with no fanfare or perfect setting, just the two of them and the sunlight and the love between them, it was exactly right. 1 year after the proposal, Riley woke up on her wedding day to find her best friend from college, Jess, standing over her with a cup of coffee and a worried expression. "You were talking in your sleep," Jess said. "Something about forgetting your vows and showing up naked." "Classic anxiety dream," Riley groaned, accepting the coffee. "What time is it?" 8 a.m. "We have 6 hours until you marry the love of your life. How are you feeling?" Riley sat up, taking stock. Nervous, yes, scared, a little, but underneath it all was a bone-deep certainty that felt like peace. "I'm ready," she said, surprised to find it was true. "Is Maya awake?" "Already up and, according to her maid of honor, stress painting in her hotel room. Apparently, she does that when she's nervous." Riley laughed, picturing it perfectly. "We're not supposed to see each other before the ceremony. That's a heteronormative tradition you can absolutely ignore," Jess pointed out. "Want me to arrange a meeting?" An hour later, Riley found herself in a quiet corner of the hotel garden, still in her pajamas, waiting. She heard footsteps and turned to see Maya approaching, also still in pajamas, paint on her hands. "Hi," Maya said, stopping a few feet away. "Hi," Riley drank her in, hair unbrushed, face free of makeup, looking absolutely perfect. Jess said you were stress painting. I painted 3 canvases before sunrise. I'm either going to have to buy you a very large anniversary present to make up for the supplies I used, or I've just created my next exhibition series. Could go either way. They stared at each other for a moment, and then both burst out laughing. We're getting married today, Riley said. In 6 hours, Maya confirmed. Are you nervous? Terrified you? Same. Riley closed the distance between them, taking Maya's paint-stained hands in hers, but also really, really sure. Me too. Maya squeezed her hands. I'm marrying my best friend today, and your girlfriend, and your partner, and my everything, Maya finished. The person I want to dance with in kitchens for the rest of my life. Riley kissed her then, soft and sweet, not caring about tradition or superstition. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. See you at the altar, Maya asked. I'll be the one crying happy tears, Riley promised. The ceremony was small, just family and close friends in a garden in Brooklyn, the same neighborhood where they'd built their life together. Riley walked down the aisle to a jazz song, the same one they'd danced to in their old kitchen. Maya was already crying before Riley was halfway down the aisle. They'd written their own vows. Riley went first, her voice shaking but steady. Maya, 2 years ago, I stood in our apartment and told you I loved you, and I was terrified you'd break my heart. Instead, you gave me yours. You taught me that bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing love despite the fear. You've made me braver, kinder, more alive. I promise to keep choosing you, every day, in every way. I promise to support your art, even when it means there's paint on every surface of our home. I promise to be honest with you, even when it's hard. And I promise to keep dancing with you in kitchens, in galleries, in life, for as long as you'll have me. Maya was openly sobbing by the end. She took a moment to compose herself, then began, Riley, you confessed your love to me, and in doing so, you gave me permission to be brave enough to love you back. You've been my best friend, my partner, my home. You've supported my dreams, even when they were scary or impractical. You've believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I promise to make sure you always feel seen, heard, and valued. I promise to put down my paintbrush and be present with you. I promise to be the person you can always count on, in good times and bad. And I promise that no matter where life takes us, we'll always have each other to come home to. When the officiant pronounced them married, they kissed to applause and cheers and probably a few scandalized gasps from older relatives, but neither of them cared. At the reception, during their first dance, Maya whispered, we did it, we did it. Riley agreed, holding her wife, close. From roommates to this, best decision I ever made, Maya said. Second best, Riley corrected. The best was saying yes when I confessed. No, Maya said firmly. The best was you being brave enough to confess in the first place. That's where everything started. They danced in circles, surrounded by everyone they loved. And Riley thought about that terrified girl who'd sat on her bed 2 years ago, working up the courage to speak her truth. If she could tell that girl anything, it would be, it's going to be more than okay. It's going to be everything you ever dreamed of and more. The song ended. Another began, and they kept dancing, kept holding each other, kept choosing each other, just like they always would.